Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating topic that pretty much affects anyone who wants to absorb new information: the science of effective learning. Because when you actually look at the research, it turns out those deeply ingrained study habits we've all been relying on for years, well, they might actually be holding us back. So, we're going to dig into the data together to see what genuinely works, what totally fails, and how we can all study less while remembering significantly more.
You know that universally frustrating feeling, right? You spent hours intensely staring at a textbook, put in all this effort only to close it and realize you don't remember a single thing. It is so easy to feel completely defeated in that moment and think, man, maybe I'm just not smart enough. But the research here is actually incredibly validating. The roadblock is not your brain's capability, not at all. It's literally just the study method you're using.
To fix that, we have a clear roadmap for this explainer. First, 1. The illusion of competence. 2. The power of active recall. 3. Beating the forgetting curve. And 4. The Feynman mastery technique.
All right, starting with section 1, the illusion of competence.
So, before we can talk about how to study properly, the data suggests we really need to diagnose the bad habits that are currently sabotaging us. Most students default to 3 basic actions. They reread notes over and over, write out long chapter summaries, or highlight text until the page looks like a glowing neon rainbow. I mean, we've all been guilty of basically painting a textbook yellow. But psychologists call this the illusion of competence. Here's what the science says happens. When you passively reread a chapter, the words naturally start to feel familiar. Your brain recognizes the flow of the sentences and sends a signal saying, "Ah, I know this." But it's a trap. It creates a deeply false sense of security.
The absolute golden rule here is that familiarity is not retention. Recognizing a concept while the open book is sitting right in front of your face is a completely different neurological process than recalling that concept from scratch when the book is closed. When exam day rolls around, or the moment you actually need to use that knowledge in real life, that comforting familiarity just vanishes. So, rule number 1 derived from these studies. We absolutely have to stop passive rereading.
Let's move to section 2, the power of active recall. If we're throwing out the highlighters and the rereading, what does the research say we should actually replace it with? Well, that brings us to what is widely considered the single most effective study technique known to science. Look at the contrast here between standard studying and active recall. We usually think of studying as an input activity, right? Like we're trying to forcefully stuff information into our brains by reading and listening. But the studies show the most effective learning actually happens through output. Instead of passively absorbing, active recall forces you to mentally reach into your brain and pull the information out. And yes, it feels significantly harder. It requires real mental strain, but that exact mental effort is what creates and strengthens the neural connections you need for true memory.
So, what does this actually look like in practice? The material points to 2 super practical frameworks you can use right away. First is the Cornell note-taking system. You just divide your paper, write your standard notes on the right side, but on the left side you write out questions based on those notes. When it's time to review, you literally cover the right side of the page and force yourself to answer those questions on the left. The second framework is the closed book method. It's exactly what it sounds like. Read a page, immediately close the book, and write down absolutely everything you can remember on a blank sheet of paper. Only when your memory is completely exhausted do you open the book back up to see what you missed. Both of these force that crucial active cognitive output.
Which brings us to section 3, beating the forgetting curve. Okay, so now we know how to aggressively capture information, but we have to address the second half of the equation. How do we prevent that hard-earned knowledge from decaying over time? To understand this, the research takes us back to the late 19th century. A psychologist named Hermann Ebbinghaus did some absolutely groundbreaking experiments on his own memory. He meticulously tracked how long it took him to forget lists of totally random nonsense syllables. And what he discovered is a biological reality every single learner on Earth deals with: the forgetting curve. Memory decay isn't a sign of a weak brain. It's just how human biology is wired to work.
And the data illustrates just how aggressive that decay actually is. Ebbinghaus found that we naturally forget about 50% of all new information within just 20 minutes of learning it. Half of it gone in the time it takes to watch a single sitcom episode. And it gets worse, you lose up to 70% within 24 hours. To put that into perspective, this data completely proves why cramming for 10 straight hours the night before a test is a mathematically doomed strategy. Your brain just physically cannot retain it all at once.
So, to beat the forgetting curve, you have to systematically interrupt it through a technique called spaced repetition. Instead of clumping all your study time into one agonizing block, you spread it out. You study a topic for an hour today,
Then, right as your brain is starting to forget it, you review it 1 day later. The curve flattens out a bit. Then you review it 3 days later, then 1 week later, and then 1 month later. Every single time you actively recall the information at these spaced intervals, you're cementing that knowledge deeper and deeper into your long-term memory.
Now, trying to manage that schedule by hand could easily become a nightmare. Thankfully, the sources point out that you can effortlessly automate this whole space review process using modern tools. Flashcard apps like Anki and Remnote are built specifically on top of spaced repetition algorithms. They automatically show you the exact cards you are on the verge of forgetting, right when you need to see them. Or, hey, if you prefer something simpler, just setting up a basic tracking system in an Excel sheet works wonders too. The specific tool doesn't really matter. It's the spaced repetition process itself that works the magic.
And finally, Section 4, the Feynman Mastery Technique.
We've covered memorization, but let's elevate our goal from simple retention to absolute, bulletproof mastery of a topic. This strategy comes to us from the legendary Nobel Prize-winning physicist Richard Feynman. Now, Feynman was notoriously brilliant, but not just because he understood complex physics. It was because he could explain those insane concepts to absolutely anyone. He operated on one core belief: if you cannot explain a concept to a 10-year-old child, you don't truly understand it yourself. Think about it. We so often use complicated vocabulary and academic jargon just to hide the fact that we don't really grasp the fundamental mechanics of a topic. Stripping away all those fancy words is the ultimate test of true comprehension.
The Feynman Technique is elegantly simple and takes just 4 steps. Step 1, choose the concept you want to master. Step 2, teach it out loud to an imaginary audience or a very patient friend using the simplest, most foundational language possible. Literally imagine you're talking to a 10-year-old, no jargon allowed. Step 3 is where the real magic happens. As you're explaining it, pay close attention to where you stumble. Where do you suddenly find yourself unable to explain the why or the how? Those are your explanation gaps. Finally, step 4, go straight back to your source material to fill only those specific gaps. Teaching exposes exactly what you know, and far more importantly, exactly what you are missing.
As we wrap up this explainer, I think the most empowering takeaway from all this research is this: studying effectively and mastering complex topics is a skill. It's a system, not some innate talent you either have or you don't. The data clearly shows you don't need a higher IQ to learn faster. You just need a better, science-backed blueprint. And well, now you have exactly that.
So based on the science, what's it going to be? Which method will you try first? Are you going to jump into active recall, automate your life with spaced repetition, or start teaching imaginary 10-year-olds with the Feynman Technique? I challenge you to pick just one for your very next study session, because if just one of these tweaks could completely rewrite how your brain stores information, imagine what else you're capable of learning. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring.